I know what happens in the Oval Office, and that's what scares me. I come at this from a very unique perspective. Not just having been a journalist, but also having worked for 2 different presidents.
Hey, folks. Hey, smile.
Pete was with the president all the time.
Unlike his predecessor, Mr. Trump does not allow his staff photographer to capture photographs of life and work inside the White House.
If you just stacked up the images of the Obama presidency and the Trump presidency, you would see the 2 stories of America in the starkest possible contrast.
The job of the chief official White House photographer is to make authentic photographs.
Photographs break down the idea that these people are somehow different from us.
I've got an idea for another picture. Did you get that piece?
Yeah. The first time that we went to the UN, he and Reggie Love played basketball. At one point, President Obama blocks Reggie's shot, and he goes, "Did you get that block?" When Barack Obama was elected, I could see what he meant to the African-American community. This 5-year-old kid asked Obama, "Is my haircut just like yours?" President Obama bent over and let that kid touch his head and his hand.
That image stands for how kids will see themselves differently forever.
I thought, who is this man? How does he deal with crisis? Leadership, character, and empathy. Don't you wish we had that now?
When I first met Pete, his politics were not at all evident. Pete changed. He could no longer be this fly on the wall.
Pete Souza is getting attention online with replies to President Trump's tweets.
I had to speak out. I knew how the job should be done.
Pete felt the urgency to show what the office can be. This was a 911.
Reagan and Obama respected the dignity of the office. The presidency is a serious job, and I was going to do everything I could to make sure people didn't forget that.
Do you have a picture for every single thing that Donald Trump has lied about with Barack Obama?
Pretty much.
So how do you introduce someone that really does not need any introduction? We have a packed house tonight, obviously, because everybody knows your work and is getting to know you and your voice now. So the best way I can sort of introduce you is to say how you've affected me, another photographer. I looked at your work throughout the years with wonderment, with pride, seeing the empathy, humanity, your light, your composition, the gravity of what you're shooting, the humor. Your shade has been the sanity in these last few years of a world gone crazy, and it let me know that I wasn't alone, and this was not the norm and shouldn't be the norm. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome Pete Souza to Open Talk, the voice of sanity and a true inspiration to many, as well as me. Pete, thank you so much for joining us.
Sorry, I muted myself earlier. So, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I know that that people were having some audio issues with the trailer, but just let us know. Make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yeah, just to let you know that this will be rebroadcast, and if you had audio issues with the trailer or anything there, we will put this back up on our American Photographic Artist webpage, which is also our YouTube page, so there'll be lots of places for that. And let's kick this off with the big question, the elephant in the room. Have you finally decided who you're voting for?
I have already voted. I voted
good.
2 weeks ago. And he called me yesterday. So the person I voted for. So
not all of us are on a phone call basis. I want to ask, it seems from a very early age that you had your sights set on journalism. What was it that really kind of triggered you to become a photographer? And did you have something that really kind of was a catalyst that, or an inspiration that really kind of set you on that journey?
Well, I'm probably older than many of the people on here. If you go back to the 70s, which is when I was in college, I went to journalism school at Boston University because I wanted to become a sports writer. I had no direction in my life. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I just loved sports. And but I was not not good at sports, and so I was like, okay, I'll try to become a sports writer. I thought that'd be a cool thing. And then in my junior year, I took a photo class, and this is the days where you're shooting black and white, you're rolling the film on the reel, process your film, you go into the dark room, you make a print under those red safe lights. And I think the first picture that I had developed and printed, when it started to appear in the Dectal developer, I was like, this is what I want to do. It wasn't so much about the journalism, it was about the magic of photography to me. It was the one, for the first time, this light bulb went off in my head, was, this is cool. This is what I want to do.
So the journey to becoming a White House photographer, and obviously you did Reagan and Obama, but it's sort of, it wasn't a set path, and it was a lot of happy coincidences. And how did that journey get you to, obviously you were shooting with Obama during the Senate, but how did you get to that first phone call, like, we want you to be the official White House photographer for us?
From President Obama?
Yeah. Let's start with Reagan, actually, because that's, earlier in the career.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, like, to be my age now and look back at, all the luck I had in my life. You just sort of, you make these decisions along the way, and it just seems to lead to one thing. So back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was working for small newspapers in Kansas, and wanted to move up to the Kansas City Star. I thought that would be like the next logical step. And there was a photo editor there by the name of Carol Greenewald. Well, she was the director of photography at the Kansas City Star. And they had an opening, and I applied, and she interviewed me and didn't hire me. And I was devastated, because I was like, that was the job I really wanted. And I subsequently moved on to the Chicago Sun-Times, which was not a bad gig. Got to work with John White and Richard Dirk, amongst other people. And so I'm in the newsroom one day, and the photo editor hands me this piece of paper. He said, you had this phone call from Carol Greenewald. And I was like, oh. Well, she had become the White House photo editor during the Reagan administration. And this would have been in early 83. And she calls me up and she said, we're looking to hire somebody to work under Michael Evans, who is the chief photographer. And she said, we want you to apply. And I was like, I was just getting my feet on the ground in Chicago. I was doing really well. I'd been there like a year and a half. And I told her, nah, I'm not really interested, because I was like, I wasn't a big fan of Reagan's. And I went home that night and I go, I think I'm stupid, and I called her back the next day and I said, okay, because I figured, like, this is my only chance to ever work at the White House. What the hell? I'll come and interview. And then I ended up getting the job.
Is it something that first day on the job, the gravity of it, and is it hitting you all at once that, these are going to be the historical moments, and my responsibility and the gravity of this? What's it like, the first couple months you're at the White House, and now to have this security clearance and, are going through all of this, that is something that most people will never, ever see in their lifetime. And the events you're witnessing, most people won't see those firsthand, and you're capturing those for all of history.
Well, I mean, the first time that is with Reagan, I was in my 20s. I was just, more or less starting my career, and had never met a president before. And, and all of a sudden I get hired and I'm ushered into the Oval Office, and there's Reagan sitting at the desk. And Michael Evans brought me in and said, I want to introduce you to Pete Souza. And it's like, holy shit, this is like the real deal. It's just, it's overwhelming. What's interesting is as, especially during the Obama administration, I saw people coming into the Oval Office for the first time that had that same look. I could tell, oh yeah, they're overwhelmed.
I want to ask you, obviously you 2 million pictures, 8 years, sitting with, almost through every event and waking hour and the sacrifice you had to put for, sitting with Obama for 8 years, when that was coming to a close and you knew it was coming to a close and you had spent that much time of your life in sacrifice. What was it like those final weeks with him? I mean, what was the mood? What were you like? And when you left, was it suddenly like this depression? It was like, I'm not there anymore. Did you kind of go through a postpartum depression or something?
Hi, David Bergman. I see that you joined. He's a friend of mine. You asked a lot of questions.
I know.
Let's put it this way: is this job just takes so much out of you, and it's the, physically and mentally, the sort of like. I did not have a break for 8 years. I didn't have much of a personal life for 8 years. And I think 6 months to go, I started a countdown clock on my phone because it was sort of like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then what went wrong was, we thought we were turning the keys over to Hillary. And there was this shocking election that was hard to fathom. I mean, the day, I think I've told this story before, or maybe I've written about it, I can't remember. The day after the election, walking into the West Wing of the White House was surreal. And I'm old enough to have gone through, the part of the 60s when Kennedy was killed. I think I was in third grade, and when Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King were killed, when Watergate, the civil rights of the 60s, the 9/11, and all the same kind of thing where we have this big obstacle in our country. And so I knew that we would, eventually survive Trump being elected, although now I wonder. And so I sort of like, that's the attitude I brought in when I went into the West Wing that day. And I when I got into my office, across the hall was the chief speechwriter's office, and I stuck my head in, and his young assistant, who was a writer in her own right, she was like in her early 20s. I just stuck my head. She was a friend of mine. I said, "You doing okay?" And she just started bawling, and I was just crying on my suit coat, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is the way it's going to be." And so that was sort of the beginning of how I was feeling. And then, we go through the transition. Inauguration day comes around. I still had that same kind of awful feeling, but I was like so happy to be done with the job. And it was just a weird emotion, in so many ways.
And it wasn't long after that you figured out throwing some shade and creating this book, and obviously kind of kicked off the movie the way I see it. You have this sort of like, I would say, folk legend ability to pull the perfect picture at the perfect time. And having shot that many pictures, almost 2 million pictures, how did you archive these? How do you reaccess these photos to pull the right one so quickly? I mean, it seems like a Superman magic ability to do that. How do you, pull from how did you archive your work?
Well, so you mentioned I shot 1.9 million photos. Every single photo and I shot all raw files, by the way. Every single photo was transferred to the National Archives, and we actually started doing that. I had an IT guy on my staff. We started doing that, I think, in like January of 16, just because we knew it was going to be a long, involved process. And I'm proud of our archive. I'm proud that we had AP style captions on every picture. We tried to identify every person that we could that was in the picture. We had keywords, and and we made a significant number of pictures public during the administration, and so I had copies of all of those. And in terms of trying to find the right picture to go with my shade, I'm just a stable genius.
So obviously the title of the film is The Way I See It. Can you explain sort of in your own mind what makes you see things different from others and really kind of makes you uniquely see or have the ability to have that voice that's different from other people as a photographer?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say, first of all, I did not choose the title of the film. I did not make the film. I'm just in it, as they say. But I thought, they thought, for a while I think they were gonna title it Shade, and they sort of went back and forth. And when they showed me this title, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. I think that the point of the title is that I have a unique perspective in commenting about what's happening today, having worked not just for President Obama, but for President Reagan. So having been, on the inside, in the room where it happens for two different presidents. And I think that's sort of where the title came from.
You had such unprecedented access to Obama, and I think you created an archive that is so rich with these moments. How do you look upon this administration and what you're seeing their official photographer come out, and what is missing, and what do you think will be missing from this current administration's archive that was captured in yours?
Well, I don't know what we're missing because I don't have any inside knowledge of what pictures are being made. The pictures that are being made public are, basically either the reality show or stage pictures. I mean, just look at the pictures from Walter Reed the last week. All stage photos. And so it's, it makes you wonder if the photographer does have any access or not. I don't really have any independent knowledge. I will say that the one picture that I've seen that was published or made public, that I was like, okay, that's a behind the scenes photo, was the picture of Nancy Pelosi standing up in the cabinet room, pointing at Trump, she was about to leave the room. And the reason that it was made public is because Trump tweeted it out because he thought it made him look good. And what it really did was say to most people, photography is subjective, but I think most people looked at that and it was like, good for Nancy Pelosi for standing up to him. That's the way I looked at it.
Were there times that you felt you captured so many incredible moments and historical moments? Was there one that kind of haunts you that you missed?
Yeah, I don't know why people always ask me that question. I mean, look, I'm sure there are pictures that I missed.
There's nothing one that's really haunting you, like, man, if I just got my camera out sooner, or like, I can't believe I didn't get that one shot.
I usually if that happened, I would agonize for like a week or two, or maybe a year, but and then sort of let it go, and so I don't have any like lasting, memories of, God, I wish I had gotten that, but I mean, just my approach to photography in documenting the president, or really what I've done my whole career, is trying to capture these fleeting moments, right? Where, you're gonna miss the moment occasionally, and maybe your framing's not gonna be precise, or you might be a little out of focus. And that's just the nature of, you know, the kind of work that I do. So I try not to agonize over it too much if I sort of like, quote unquote, miss something.
Knowing that every single frame that you're going to, you know, shoot is going into the National Archive, did you ever hesitate to take a photo because you're like, in your head, you're like, I know this is going to go there? Did it ever stop you, or you just shot freely and kind of really, what kind of process goes through when you're, you know, that is going to happen?
Yeah, no, that didn't really enter my mind, because there's a period of time for the images that weren't made public during the administration. I forget how many years it is, where, you know, until the entire archive is opened up, and by then it's not like the news of the day. It's you know, it's part of history. I mean, there'll be some interesting pictures that people will talk about for sure once the archives opened up. And I don't mean that in a sinister way. I mean that in a you know, there's some sensitive pictures that you know, we just couldn't make public for, you know, different reasons.
What is that like when you have a security clearance and you're in these situations, and as a photographer, you're there to capture the moment, but also as a human being, you're experiencing and seeing things that normal people don't see, and are you kind of in between just watching it through your lens, or kind of experiencing it at the same time too, or you just then are just going home and then realizing what you went through?
A little of both. I mean, I think, or a little of all three, depending on the particular situation.
And honestly, having that kind of clearance, how hard is it when you go home not to say anything to your wife or other people that you just saw something?
Well, you know, when I talked about pictures that are going to come out that are sensitive, I'm talking about, you know, there's some of the pictures I have, like, for instance, when he went to Dover Air Force Base, when the remains of our soldiers who had died in the line of duty, you know, they're just so emotional. And,
yeah,
you know, eventually those will be made public. In terms of like meetings and stuff like that, I mean, yeah, no, I didn't talk to my wife about anything that was, you know, classified. But, you know, usually, well, I'll give you an example. So whatever year was it, 2015, where we opened, or maybe it was 2016, we opened relations with Cuba. I mean, I had known about that for a year, that it was in the works, you know, because they had meetings with him, you know, every couple months. And, you know, not only did I have to, you know, in the photograph, it's hard to tell what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's still a photograph. But, you know, I couldn't tell anybody what the meeting was about. So even in archiving those pictures, we kind of wrote like a temporary nondescript caption. And, you know, I told the photo archivist that just make a note, and at an appropriate time, we'll rewrite that caption to include the information of, you know, this is when they were talking about opening relations with Cuba.
I know you guys shared some photos with me. I want to bring them up and, you know, just briefly kind of, you can tell me what we're looking at and kind of the story behind it quickly. So we'll start with the first one that you guys sent over to me.
Yeah, so this was one of the photos from the Senate days, and this would have been February of 2007. And I had gotten I'd gotten to know him professionally. I was working for the Chicago Tribune, and had gotten access that other people hadn't gotten. And so when he was about to announce that he was running for president, I was like begging them to let me backstage before he was announced out onto the stage in Springfield, Illinois. And so this is just before he's about to walk out. And to me, this is a storytelling picture in that you can see on his face and Michelle's face, and maybe even the girl's face. He's about to walk out the door, and his life is never going to be the same.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I like this picture so much. Yeah, this skips ahead 13 years. So this is Inauguration Day 2017. And there's this tradition where the president-elect comes to the White House in the morning before the inauguration for a reception with the leaders of Congress and the incoming vice president, outgoing vice president. And after everybody had loaded the motorcade, President Obama took Trump aside and had to brief him confidentially on this national security issue. And so, yeah, that's what's going on here.
It must have been the gravity of that of Obama, and you guys must have shared so much time together and had a working relationship that went beyond a friendship. I mean, it's not every photographer that has their wedding in the Rose Garden. Do you feel at that moment you guys just connected on a level through 8 years that was probably not going to be really repeated by many photographer relationships in the White House?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of like, my mom died on Sunday, and, President Obama called me yesterday, and I hadn't talked to him for a while. And, it's sort of like, an old friend that calls you up that you just pick up right where you were. And I guess the point that I would make is that every emotion that he ever went through as president, I was in the room for. And in some ways, I experienced it with him. Even though I wasn't the participant, I was the observer. I was like I was, cognizant of the emotions that he was going through in that moment. And there's a certain bond between us because of that. I think that will be as long as I live, that we'll have that bond.
I mean, there's a beauty and empathy that you capture in the photos, and that's what I think makes your work so powerful. And are you guys still exchanging emails now today? Like, I can't believe this guy just said this on the TV, or
No, we never talk politics.
Oh, good.
never talk politics. We talk about, in fact, I was asking him about Sasha Malia when we were talking yesterday. He was asking me about my wife, and I have a new granddaughter. He was asking about her. So that's the kind of things we talk about. We don't talk politics. Rarely do we.
And what's amazing about these photos is you see these amazing moments, such as this one, where President is a human being, a father, sharing time with the family. And I don't remember seeing any of these moments in this current administration. And that's why these photos, I think, remind us of what normal is supposed to look like. And these moments are so beautiful. What was this like for you when you're taking them? I mean,
well, I mean, we had this big snowstorm in DC, and it pretty much shut down the city. I actually slept in my office because I didn't think I'd be able to get home, and I didn't think I'd be able to get back to the White House. And the next day was a Saturday, and I figured at some point they'd come out and play in the snow because it was just this humongous snowstorm. And it was like just the three of them on the 18 acres of the White House running around for an hour and a half, and just me trailing them. And I included this photo because to this day, this is the lock screen photo on his iPad. Oh. And for those of you that the film, if you haven't seen it in the theater, and I wouldn't, I'm not supposed to say this, but I wouldn't recommend going to a theater unless you're in a safe.
Well, luckily on Friday on MSNBC.
Yeah, Friday it'll be commercial free too.
Yes.
Friday at 10 p.m. on MSNBC Eastern Time. But this photograph is featured, and I talk about them doing snow angels on the South Lawn. The producers got this guy, Aloe Black, to write a song called Snow Angels, based on this photograph with some of the other pictures of the girls. So look for that if you watch the film.
Now, obviously, this is such an iconic image, and I would love for you to talk about it. But I also want to talk about taking images. This one, you knew the gravity of it when you were in there. But has there been times you've taken a photo that it wasn't until maybe a day or two later that you didn't even realize what you had, and kind of really hit you once you looked at it, like, oh my God, I can't believe I have this? And what was that?
You ask a lot of questions, and
I know I have such little time with you. I'm trying to get it all in there. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this day, obviously, I knew it would be historic. Didn't know how it was going to turn out. It could have turned out really bad, but knew it was going to be historic. And I mean, I think photographers in the room will appreciate this. I mean, I was stuck in this corner of the room. I couldn't really move. And as this is all playing out, this really tense situation during the raid itself, which lasted 40 minutes. And I'm like, the light in this room sucks, right? There's nothing I can do about it. And, but I can't, shoot at f8 or anything. And so, I'm thinking, I think I shot this at f4, and I'm thinking like, okay, what should my point of focus be to get as much depth of field as possible? Like, those are the things that were going through my mind, the technical part of it. And I will say that, I was very cognizant that you see on the table in front of Hillary, or on that little laptop, there's a classified document that we ended up having to pixelize, blur it out, because it was classified. And as I was making these pictures during the 40 minutes, I was like, that's going to be a problem. I knew it was. And I thought about just leaning over and taking it off the table. And I was like, I cannot do that. This is authentic. I got to just, it is what it is. If we can't publish the photo now or make it public now, we will at some point. But so that was one of the things that was going through my mind.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have asked through the chat rooms, and I assume the answer is you don't. But people want to know: have you ever staged or ever asked someone to move or do something for a photo, or are you just actually just there as a journalist capturing what is in front of you?
Yeah, no, never staged anything, never directed anything. Now there were obviously situations where you're doing grip and grins, and where, somebody comes in, they pose for the camera, but it's obviously they're posing for the camera. But in terms of like moments, no, I would never do that.
Yeah. I mean, this I think is one of those photos that the gravity of it, you may not have even realized it at the time. And is such an iconic, important image for so many reasons. And I'd love for you to discuss it.
Yeah, just thanks, Michael Schwartz. I see your question there, or your comment. So this was, I talked about the grip and grins. Well, this was the end of a grip and grin, where this is a guy, Carlton, Philadelphia, the man had worked for the national security staff, was a non-political person assigned to the national security staff for a couple years, worked for part of the time during the Bush administration, carried over to Obama. And then when he was about to leave the White House, President Obama invited them, family, in for a photo. And when we finished taking the grip and grin, the little boy, whose name is Jacob, his mom said, "Mr. President, Jacob has a question for you." And Jacob was like, "Mr. President, my friends tell me my haircut is just like yours." And so President Obama bent over and said, "Go ahead and touch it." And you see the image. It was happened like that. Not the best composition. Didn't know it was going to happen. Have one frame and it was over. But I think the picture really resonates with people because you got an young African-American kid touching the head of the President of the United States that looks like him, and what that will mean to not you're just people of color for many years to come. But I think it also tells you something about President Obama, that at the behest of a 5-year-old kid, you'd go ahead and bend over and let this kid touch your head like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen today.
We're not sure about that hair anyway.
Yeah, I included a couple of pictures of, what I call the consoler in chief, where there's a national tragedy, in this case, the terrible tornado in Joplin, where, hundreds of people, I think it was more than 100 people were killed, and, property damage was immense, and it just tore through this town. And he always felt that, part of his job was to go and console these folks. And, it's hard emotionally for him. It was hard for me to capture these moments in terms of, I didn't want to be, I didn't want to make anybody ever feel uncomfortable. And I think the other one, I don't know if you have that vertical from Newtown.
I think this is the last. Oh no, I have one or two other images that you sent me as well.
Well, we'll go back. This is a picture that you see behind me.
Yeah. Oh yes.
But you can go for it. Whatever order you put them in is fine.
Yeah, I just the way they were sent to me, I put them.
Yeah. So this was he had gone to an event at his daughter's school, and as he was walking back to the motorcade, there was a daycare center next door. And he saw these kids hanging out the window. They didn't know who he was, but there was a lot of commotion. Big guys with suits with things in their ears and big black cars. And he goes, "I'm going to go say hi to these kids." And it's like one of those things you just can't expect to happen. By the way, that kid in the middle sent me a letter the other day.
Oh.
And this is his daughter, Sasha.
Yeah, just a beautiful moment.
And I'm, you're sort of looking for these scenes that you don't need to see his face. This is Michelle and he on a boat in the Gulf Coast, and I saw Michelle stroking his hand, and I think it shows the intimacy of their relationship.
I think this is the image that you were referring to.
Yeah, this is another one of those. This was from Newtown after the shootings, and this is the Wheeler family. Their young son Ben, who was 6 years old, was shot and killed, and Francine, the mom, had just showed President Obama photos of Ben, and that's their older son Nate in the foreground, and he went to the same school, Sandy Hook, and was in 3rd or 4th grade, and hid in a school supply closet, but heard all the shots ring out.
Having spent so many years behind the camera, and now suddenly you're this voice, and being interviewed and shot in front of the camera, is that a transition you like? Is it something that's easy, or is it you're just doing it because it has to be done, and your voice needs to be shared? Because you shared that normalcy, and I think it's so important to you, and that's why you came out with all of this information.
I had to do it. It's as simple as that. I just to paraphrase John Lewis, if you see something wrong, say something. And I this guy, I felt, hope I don't offend anybody here, but I felt he was a con man, and was disrespectful to the office of the presidency. Does not have an empathetic bone in his index finger. And I just thought we needed somebody who was competent and who is a decent person in that office, someone who believed in science and facts, and not somebody who just lied to us like every day and just bullied people that criticized him. We're better than that. And I thought, because I had worked for both a Republican and a Democrat, and possibly the most iconic Republican and the most iconic Democrat of our, at least my generation, that, I had this unique voice to be able to speak out. So I just felt I had to do it.
Well, and we're so thankful that you do it, because it means so much to us. To the normalcy and knowing that that's the way it's supposed to be is very important right now. Because I have never felt like this in my life. And granted, I'm younger than some that are on here, but it troubles me like I can't even explain. And I think it's beyond people's comprehension that we could have gotten to this point. And for you, do you see hope at the end of the tunnel? What have you seen something recently that kind of restores your faith in humanity that we're going to get through this, or you was just kind of worried about this, election coming up as well?
Sure, I'm worried. I'm worried. It's like I could never have predicted that we would have had a global pandemic, or that we would have had thousands of people on the streets protesting equal justice. But it's actually not that surprising that this guy couldn't deal with either one of them in a leadership and kind of way. So it's hard. I mean, I do think that, just based on I live in Wisconsin now, based on the turnout we had in 2018. I mean, I live in Madison. We had 92% of eligible voters voted in 2018. And so I sort of feel hopeful that people are going to turn out despite the pandemic.
Just seeing on the news the other day, people waiting 11 hours to early vote.
Which is crazy that they have to do that. That's not right. But I do feel that if people vote, if people get out to vote, whether it's, we always hear this term mail-in. I call it voting at home, right? You vote at home, and then how you transport that ballot is mail, or in my case, I walked my absentee ballot to the city clerk and I handed it to the city clerk. Same thing basically. But however one chooses to vote, they've got to let their voice be heard. So anybody that's on this, even if you disagree with me, that's okay. But vote for. It's the one thing you can do. It's great to protest in the street, but it's got to be. It's not either or. It's got to be both. You've got to let your voice be heard vocally, but also at the ballot box. And that's not just for the presidency. It is at the local level as well.
Yeah, I know we have you only for a limited time. I'm just going to hit a couple of these viewer questions that we have. And I got to say that I'm sure this is the one question that you get over and over and over, and it's the one question that I got over and over and over. If Biden won, would you go back to shooting the presidency? And I'm sure you've done your time, but the responsibility of that, how would you handle that if Biden actually asked you to come back?
Well, I hope he doesn't ask me, because I love Joe Biden as a human being. And but at the same time, as I talked about just the impact this takes on your personal life, I just don't feel that I could do it again. So I'm but I do want to help whoever his photographer is in terms of get situated and remind that person what the job of the official White House photographer should be about, which is to visually document the presidency for history. And we need to get back to that.
One question we had is you were so good at being a fly on the wall and kind of just hiding in the background and getting these shots. Do you have any advice for people that maybe aren't as stealthy and maybe land on people's heads instead of being on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, my approach was to I was pretty stealthy, I have to say, and I just used quiet cameras. I mean, if I was doing that job today, I'd be using mirrorless cameras. But at the time, 2009, when we started, mirrorless cameras were the Leica M8 or whatever it was a terrible camera. and it really wasn't that quiet. And I thought the Canon 5D Mark II, which is what I started out using, was pretty quiet, certainly more quieter than Nikon in terms of on the silent, quote unquote, silent mode. So it's just, use quiet cameras. I didn't carry that much gear, just basically 2 bodies and 3 lenses. I didn't use a motor drive, didn't use a flash. And just tried to always be there. If you're there all the time, people get used to you. I guess I had a knack for being able to move around in these spaces with powerful people and not be, intimidated in any way, and just, feel like I belong there.
Some people want to know what were the main differences between working with the Reagan White House and the Obama White House?
We don't have enough time to talk.
Fair enough.
No. I will say, it is a different era. It was film versus digital. It was the Reagan administration was more controlling of the image in terms of a lot of the pictures that I'm proud of that I made during the Reagan administration were not made public, until I published the book. And I think that was for whatever reason, they were afraid to show him as just these authentic human moments, which, I think in some respects was, a mistake on their part, but whatever. I was able to make the pictures, so that was important. And then, I think because I had already known Barack Obama for 4 years before he became president, and having been, a seasoned photojournalist, that's better than saying old. I knew how the White House worked. I was not going to take any shit from anybody in terms of access, and he got it. He understood what I was trying to do, and thought it was important to have this visual record for history.
A lot of people are very interested in the rights, copyright rights and ownership rights of your photography as a White House photographer. And I know it goes to the National Archive, but I think you explaining it would be much easier for people to understand, how the rights of the book equate to you and to other people.
Yeah. So there is no copyright on images. Anything that was made public during the administration is already considered public domain, so anybody can use them. Now, the only asterisk there is there still is the protection for the president in terms of, like, if Brooks Brothers did an ad of him wearing one of his suit coats, and it was a picture I shot, they couldn't use it for an ad, because it's the likeness of the president is still protected, even though he's former president. So those are the only restrictions. I mean, there's been a couple books published with all of my photos that, somebody else slapped their name on the cover, which, that's just the way it is. Sort of like, a good analogy, even though the Farm Security Administration, that archive is at the Library of Congress, it's the same sort of thing, where, there's tons of books of, Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans photos that they didn't do the book, somebody else did the book. But they were also able to do their own book. So it's same kind of thing.
Yeah. Now that you've hung up your hat as the White House photographer, is there something that you're pointing your lens to now, or a project that you have on the horizon that you've really kind of put off and now that you want to do with your camera?
Yeah, I keep getting sidetracked by my Instagram feed and a couple of books, and then this film, and and then COVID comes along and just clamps down on I'm sort of at the age and have had asthma my whole life, so I do not want to get COVID. So I've been careful. This has been such a dramatic year news-wise, but so it's been hard to kind of sit it out. I mean, I actually have done a lot of like, sort of fun nature and macro photography the last year, just for for fun. And I have a granddaughter, so I've shot a lot of pictures of her. But I mean, I think that once COVID is over, I'm starting to think about another project to do.
One other question before we get to our last question for you. Thank you for your time. One of the members here wanted to know, were there any moments that you witnessed that you did not make an image because you just thought they were too personal or they shouldn't have been photographed?
None that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, so just to give people an idea, like when Newtown and, these terrible tragedies, whether it be a mass shooting or a natural disaster, obviously people know we're coming, and there's an advance team that goes and sets it all up, and they let the families know, Pete's going to be in a room, he's going to be taking pictures, we're not going to make these pictures public. We will send you copies. If there is a circumstance where the White House wants to make a picture public, you will have the chance to say yes or no. And so there were a couple times when a couple families said they didn't want me taking pictures of their meeting with President Obama, and I would obviously honor that. I mean, there's one time it was this mudslide outside of Seattle, and all the families were gathered into this little church, and so they knew this. And there were a couple families that had said, we really don't want pictures taken, and the advance people tipped me off, and I was like, okay, fine. And then as he went around the room and met with these families, and I was making my pictures, one of the families went back to the advance person and said, I'm okay with him taking pictures now. So I just felt good about that, in the sense that they could see that I took my job seriously, that I wasn't trying to intrude, that I wasn't using a motor drive, I wasn't trying to make anybody uncomfortable. And, so just those were the hardest times. And, there may be a couple families that I never photographed this encounter with because they asked me not to, and I was fine with that.
So that brings us to, I asked two final questions of all of my guests on Open Talk. And the first one is, have you seen anything in the last several weeks that just kind of made you smile or gave you hope for the future, or made you kind of laugh, or, just when things are going to be okay? It was this sign that I saw on Instagram, and I posted it on my stories. Let's see if I can find it real quick, because I don't remember exactly what it said. Yeah. But it was about, it was mask required for service. So somebody, a retail store, had posted this sign. Do not pout, do not whine, do not argue, do not harass the employees, do not spout conspiracy theories or regurgitate misinformation you get from your dumb uncle on Facebook, and, and on and on. And I just thought that is awesome. I have a fefeeling Dr. Seuss would have had a field day writing a book on this.
And then the other one that made me laugh was after the vice presidential debate, there was this meme going around with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in her justice robe, with the caption, "I sent the fly."
I've seen that one. That was
pretty funny.
I love that. I love that. And the final question I have for you, on the most personal sense to you, what is photography?
I think for me, photography is using the light that's in front of you and trying to either make a moment, or like I do with my macro photography, try to make an interesting composition. And if you can I was somewhat hamstrung at the White House because other than the Oval Office, the lighting in most of the rooms really sucked, and it was always the same. That it didn't ever change. But I always felt if I could make a moment where the framing was pretty good, the composition was pretty good, and the lighting was exquisite, that was, and there was some intimacy to the image, then that was what I always strive to do.
Well, I want to thank you so much. And I know I bombarded you with questions, but I know I had only in 1 hour to get all of this in. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to implore everybody to watch The Way I See It on MSNBC this Friday at 10 p.m. I want to thank Focus Features and Pictures and MSNBC Films and Deborah Gilbert, who helped produce this event today. And on behalf of American Photographic Artists, I want to thank you very much for spending your time with us here tonight. And it meant the world to us, and you mean the world to us, and we all want to continue hearing your shade. And any parting words from you to send off our photographers here?
Well, I mean, I gotta promote the film, right? I mean, I guess I would say that if you don't have cable, that starting a week later, so October 23rd, it will be streaming on, like iTunes and Peacock, and so I don't even know all the different platforms, but so if you can't see it Friday night, you'll have a chance to see it elsewhere.
If you could have someone walk away with one thing from this film, what would it be?
I guess it would be there is two things. One, there is a power to still photography, and two, that we really need to have somebody that's a decent human being representing us as president. That job should be about us and not about him.
I agree. Thank you so much for your time. I want to wish you the very best, and this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks for so many people for attending.
And we'll be watching on Friday. I'm going to do a watching party, a nice view party on Friday night. Take care.
Okay, thanks.